Good afternoon to everyone here and those viewing at home on this beautiful, very warm spring day. We Unitarians of Lake Norman are an open and inclusive congregation. Our members walk diverse paths to find meaning and purpose. But we are united in our belief in the inherent worth and dignity of all people, and by the responsibility to express our faith through acts of justice and compassion. My name is Andy Smith, and I have been a member of this congregation since last August, and a former member of a UU congregation in New Jersey. Reverend Pat will be speaking to us today about duality, and last week's talk was about love. So this ponderable by Alaric Hutchinson in his book, Living Peace, Essential Teachings for Enriching Life, wrote, "Love is being able to view a situation without adding duality to it." Maybe Reverend Pat will shed some light or make us more confused on this thought today. We start our services and other activities by lighting a candle inside a chalice and speaking words that call us to that occasion. Please join me in saying today's chalice lighting words, which are in your order of service. We light this flaming chalice to illuminate the world we seek. In our search for truth, may we be just. In our search for justice, may we be fair and loving, and in loving, may we find peace. Reverend Pat has opening words.
And you're stealing my thunder.
Uh-oh.
I do have a stone I want to put in the water. Stephanie Lattimore died about 3 or 4 days ago. She was 47 years old. She has 2 grown children. Thank goodness they're grown, but nobody wants to lose a 47-year-old mama. She has a wonderful husband, Jobe. I'm not going to tell you why this is so emotional for me, except to say that on July the 7th, 2019, when we formed the All Souls Unitarian Community in Forest City, she sat next to me during the snack time, and she said, "This is so wonderful to have a Unitarian congregation in little old Rutherford County, North Carolina." She said, "I've been watching you for years." She said, "I've watched you online doing the service down in Greenville, South Carolina." She said, "I know who you are, and I know what you stand for." And she said, "Thank you so much for starting this congregation." For Stephanie. Now, I don't know how this is going to work. We're going to try to make it work. Let's not even try to make it work. Let me just move this over here. No reflection on the setup crew. I don't know how you all thought that microphone ought to be over there. That's okay. I love you.
They usually have mics stand over here for this.
I don't know how to turn that off.
Here.
I want to say something totally outrageous right here at the beginning. If people truly understand what is about to happen in this room this afternoon, it would be worth $50,000, $100,000 for couples. People watching on YouTube at home would be willing to pay $50,000 for what is about to happen in this room and on their computer screens at home. It'll be available on YouTube. We might even pick up some more income down the way. Now you're thinking I've gone over the edge, but it's not about me. It's about oneness. about the wisdom of Rumi, about how the universe is a single field of energy. And we experience that single field of energy. As we experience that single field of energy, we lose our separate identities. We are not the pictures on our driver's licenses. We are not our image in the mirror. We are not what our wives or husbands think of us. We are part of a single field of energy. We can understand the infinite and eternal value of losing ourselves in the totality of everything. You might miss it. You might even want your money back. But what Rumi and subatomic physics and Toto pulling the curtain back on the Wizard of Oz, the combination of these gifts this afternoon are tickets of infinite and eternal worth. It's a metaphorical $50,000, but it is still infinite and eternal worth. I guarantee it. Quaker mystic Rufus Jones said the mystical experience, which is far more common than the critics of mysticism realize, finds its most solid support, not in ecstasy or miracles, but in the verifying facts of our everyday life. Grateful Dead band member Robert Hunter wrote the words, and Jerry Garcia wrote the music you're about to hear Teresa play this afternoon. But these are the words to the song. If my words did glow from the gold of sunshine, and my tunes were played on the harp unstrung, would you hear my voice come through the music? Would you hold it near as if it were your own? It's a hand-me-down. The thoughts are broken. Perhaps they're better left unsung. I don't know. Don't really care. Let there be songs to fill the air. Ripple in still water. When there is no pebble tossed, no wind to blow. Reach out your hand if your cup be empty. If your cup is full, may it be again. Let it be known there is a fountain that was not made by the hands of men. There is a road, no simple highway, between the dawn and the dark of night. And if you go, no one may follow. The path is yours for your steps alone. with my fabulous intro from Andy. I'm prepared to agree with anything anybody says today, including you. I'm not saying that all of us are allowed our own opinions. Rather, truth be told, there is nothing about any of our most deeply held beliefs, assumptions, worldviews that I would challenge today. It just does no good. Lincoln said leadership is figuring out which way the crowd is going and getting out in front of them. Morris Udall, while running for president in 1976, said, folks, these are my positions. If you don't like them, I'll change them. And there's the old joke on the Irish Catholics. Cyrus O'Haney went to Father O'Leary and asked for a funeral for his dog. Father O'Leary says, no, Cyrus, you know we don't do a funeral for a dog. Cyrus said, it's a pity. I planned on giving the church $10,000 in memory of me dog. Father O'Leary says, oh, Cyrus, you didn't tell me your dog was a Catholic. And finally, an old saying that I could not find attribution for. Your view depends on your point of view. I did find this. Having children of your own definitely gives you a new point of view on how hard it can be for parents to deal with kids throwing tantrums in public. My dear brother Bill, who many of you know, had all kinds of parenting advice for me up until he had children of his own. As the quote affirms, having children of your own changes your point of view on many things. Where is all this headed? 2 weeks ago, I talked a great deal about subatomic physics, the fact that matter does not exist, and getting rid of dualistic thinking. Both Jim Arnold and Karen Abrams came out of the service a bit flummoxed. I assume Jim Arnold is staying away for the reason he doesn't want to be flummoxed again. I quoted Rumi's poem on dualism not working. 800 years ago, he wrote, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in the grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. Those are 6 lines of poetry that have crossed the ocean and lasted 800 years. You can bet your sweet potato that there aren't many jingles that have done that. Sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't. That one's 60 years old, maybe 70. The Declaration of Independence is fixing to turn 250. For 800 years, the poetry of Rumi has ridden the waves and the turns of the calendar pages, and as confusing as they may be, as much like subatomic physics as they may be, they have remained. There they are. Churchill said, truth is uncontrovertible. Malice may attack it, ignorance may deride it, but in the end, there it is. And yet, what in the world could Rumi have meant when he wrote those 6 lines of poetry? Look at just those first 2 lines. Out beyond ideas of right doing and wrongdoing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. Well, please, Mr. Rumi, you who have titillated poets and singers and love-drunk romantics for 800 years, what other kind of doing is there beyond right doing and wrongdoing? Isn't it plain as day that something is either done right or it's done wrong? What else is there? Well, what about not doing? Or delegating? I'm not sure that I could get this done. Why don't you give it a try? Or procrastination. There is that great credo of the procrastinator. Never do anything today which you can put off until tomorrow. It may not end up getting a lot done, but it's funny. Clearly, Rumi's poem did not last for 800 years by being funny. It lasted because it accomplished what Alan Watts tried to teach in his decades of asking us to consider Buddhism. We must question our attachment to certain ideas, certain thoughts. Thomas Jefferson said, "I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it." Sure, of course, free speech, but also free thought. This is at the heart of Unitarian Universalism. Many of us believe in reproductive freedom. Many of us believe that a woman has the right to control whether or not she brings a baby into the world. But I will never forget a woman rising in another UU congregation and saying tearfully, she genuinely believes reproductive freedom is just wrong, that all pregnancies should bring babies into the world. Nobody in that UU congregation attacked her verbally or otherwise. We defended her right to say what she had to say. But Rumi is talking about something even deeper. He is talking about a realm, a transcendent reality with as much validity as the one we think we are living through right now. This is real? Apparently so. Looks real. I tried to make the point 2 weeks ago that subatomic physics, quantum reality, defies the kind of hot and cold, right and left, up and down, even right and wrong that appears to be holding everything together through dualism. At this very moment, there is simply more going on. It is not enough to imagine we are perceiving it through our senses. Maybe the most revealing metaphor for all is Toto pulling back the curtain on The Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Or how about this one? The emperor is not wearing any clothes. Do we really need children's stories to wake us up from the illusions that we have all the answers and everything can be explained if we just look it up on Wikipedia? There truly are mysteries that cannot be explained. And if we move toward that out beyond, which we hear in Rumi's poem, we can begin to embrace mystery. Mystery is not a problem to be solved in every case. Mystery is in the wind, the ocean waves, as T.S. Eliot wrote about, the silence between the waves. And why in the world am I continuing to talk about this when clearly what we need is to be calling the offices of our senators and representatives, showing up for No Kings rallies? And Sandy, thank you so much for that wonderful list of rallies that Bruce put in the newsletter. I think there's 6 within our immediate easy drive, 6 No Kings rallies. I hope all of you will be at all 6. Don't we need to be keeping the pressure on evil people who have driven us to the wall with death, destruction, even the killing of children? For me personally, it all showed up Thursday afternoon at the Pines. Some of you know that once a month I meet with folks over at the Pines to talk about stuff, spiritual stuff, religious stuff that comes up for all of us. My colleague, Ashley Thomas, looked around at, I think there maybe been 6 or 7 of us in the room. She looked around and she pointed at herself. And she said, for me, it is remembering that I only can do what I can do. And taking some consolation from that. We've got enough bad news right now to drive us all crazy. And I really appreciate the fact that we've gathered here today in some semblance of not being crazy. But it's bad, y'all. This is as bad as it has been in my lifetime, and probably as bad as it has been for all of you in yours. What she had to say reminded me of the Buddhist version of the Serenity Prayer. May I have the courage to change the things I can, the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the wisdom to know the difference. Oh, we gotta talk, don't we?
We gotta talk.
Sometimes I try to just sit down. Let's talk.
So let's talk. Anybody have a question, comment, confusion that they'd like to address?
I have a confusion,
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
as often happens. Well, I've been thinking about your words over the past several weeks. And I'm either confused or I'm too literal or something. But I keep thinking, why is everything all one thing? When I look at something and then somebody else looks at it and tells me I'm completely wrong, what I'm seeing in the end is the infinite variety of everything. I could talk with you for 5 minutes and get a pretty good idea of kind of who you are. Somebody else could talk to you for a similar 5 minutes and come away with a completely different impression.
They're out there.
And tomorrow I'm going to talk with you for a separate 5 minutes and get a completely different impression. So what I'm seeing is infinite variety in everything, tangibles and intangibles. And it follows the same logic, I think, that you're following with everything is one. But I'm confused. I mean, I'd like to believe you, I would.
After all, I am a minister.
Oh, yeah, you're tall.
Okay. What happened for me, and Bruce asked me this question 2 weeks ago when I did the other Rumi subatomic physics talk. Bruce asked me what had happened to me specifically along the way that had convinced me of this, and it was breaking up with a girlfriend. And the universe came to me and said, "You're putting too much emphasis on that syllable. You have got to fall in love with everything." Of course, I'm not in love with the war. Of course, I'm not in love with the ICE policies, with immigration. Just spent time this morning dealing with some stuff that Susan Cameron sent me from This American Life, which I beg all of you to look at and listen to on my Facebook page. The horror that's being perpetrated by ICE is so much worse than we imagine because it's policy. They dream this stuff up behind closed doors. They're really hitting us hard with it. I'm not in love with that. But I am in love with the totality of everything because it includes my own sense of injustice. It includes my own love of infinite variety. I'm like you. I look around, I find infinite variety. But I have to back up to oneness because it's the only thing that makes sense to me. It's got to be all one thing. It's got to be a single system of energy that is both allowing horrible things and making good things happen. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. And I'm sure you are no less confused than you were 2 minutes ago.
You got that?
Okay, good. Jane. Help me, Jane.
Save him if you can.
Save me if you can.
Well, one thing I thought when you were talking was about how in Christianity, Jesus said we are all one body, but we're different parts of the body. And it requires all the parts, and the eyes cannot despise the feet or the genitals or whatever, because we are all a part of this. And I think that's the same sort of idea. But I think that when you're talking about believing that all is one, that it takes a lot of humility and a lot of audacity to even think about it. Because it's humility, because you're saying, I'm not all, I'm not the center of the universe. There is this whole immense thing that I'm just a little bitty speck of. And I remember hearing Madeleine L'Engle, who wrote A Wrinkle in Time, talk about her earliest memory was being taken outside by her mother and being in the arms of her mother and her mother showing her the stars and her feeling so small and yet a part of something so big. But I think it takes audacity too, because it's not just saying, I'm this little speck in the middle of a big thing, but I'm part of this big thing. I'm not inconsequential. And even the horrible things that are happening, that's part of who I am too. That doesn't mean that I don't fight against it. It just means I can't separate myself from it. Does that help at all?
I help a bunch.
Getting closer.
Here, here.
Pat, I think a little bit of the confusion is we have two things going on. We're talking about the oneness and we're talking about duality. Okay, so I'd like to address both of them. I'll be brief. Okay, so
No pressure.
hey, I don't feel any pressure. I'm with friends. Okay, so regarding the oneness, I think that's the ultimate enlightenment. Buddha reached enlightenment. Buddha was not a god. Buddha was a teacher. He did reach enlightenment. So all of us are on the path to spiritual growth, but we're far from enlightenment. When we're enlightened, chances are we'll be there, the oneness. So we'll keep working on that. Does that help a little bit? That's what oneness is?
Yeah, it helps me, because I think you're on my side.
I am on your side, brother. I always have been, I am, and I will be. But okay, so that's my take on oneness. One of my gurus with my meditation says that's the ultimate goal, is you feel oneness with everything and everybody. And I struggle with it. I cannot feel oneness with Trump. To be frank, okay. But anyway, I'm going to move on to the duality. Regarding the duality is not something we're in favor of. We're just saying that it exists. Alan White called it the game of black and white. We think everything has to be black or white. And of course, everything black is bad, everything white is good. But it doesn't have to be that. Everything doesn't have to be good or bad. And you mentioned abortion. Okay, so Republicans think abortion is bad. Some think it's the ultimate evil. And so if everything's either good or bad, then, well, obviously Democrats think abortion is good. But Democrats don't think abortion is good. I can't imagine a more horrendous decision than a decision to have an abortion. But there are a lot of circumstances that make it necessary. So you can be for it and not necessarily think it's good. You can think it's horrible, awful, but you got to do it. And so we say they ought to have the right to make that decision. So some things are not either good or bad. You spill milk, your parents might tell you that's bad. You go up and every time you break a glass or you turn over a glass of milk or something, you say, "Oh, I did a bad thing." Well, you didn't. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. You just spilled milk. So let's go with that. Did that help?
Well, I'll be quick. I think all of this for me boils down to the fact that life is a mystery and we'll probably never really be able to figure it out. And I think that's okay.
So, Pat, you and I are born around the same time. And you said in your lifetime, my lifetime too, a whole lot of us, this is the worst thing you've seen. Sir, there's been a lot of worse things going on in our lifetime. We've lived through an awful lot of really terrible things that weren't even made the news, that were really horrendous. However, in our lifetime, we've also experienced tremendous joy, beauty. Protesting the war back in the 70s brought together a whole lot of people that whole thing about being hippies and going to love-ins and all of that as a counter to what was going on. The variety of experience, how we take it in, how we can look at something and say, oh yeah, like this, but if we turn around and look at it like that, it's still not that good, but hey, there's room for improvement. The mystery of finding out, searching for the answer, the search, that's what we live on a daily basis. It's how we find out. So.
Well, when I was taking a philosophy course, this is back in the days when dinosaurs roamed, and you look out the window from the classroom, they'd be going by looking in at you. But when we studied Rumi, the professor called the field, Rumi's field of integration. And the reason for that was that the field was to show us and help us understand that all of these things may seem to be opposites, but they actually can come together. They actually are one. So things were in Rumi's field, if you can imagine being in that field, things that you may have thought were either black or white or bad or good have come together and actually share characteristics to make them integrated. So that's what we learned as the Brontosaurus was looking in the window. And that's just another way that might help you. And Sandy, as to what you had to say, what I would say to you is that if you talk to Pat for 5 minutes or you talk to anyone for 5 minutes, and then you were concluding, what have you learned about that person? What kind of a person are they? All you can do is filter through your own filters. Everything that you think you have learned from that conversation comes from all the experiences you have had in your life, comes from what you decide is real and true about that person versus what I might have a conversation with Pat and I might come away thinking, woo-hoo, for Cocoa Puffs. But someone else might think, this is brilliance. You are filtering it through your reality. And so we each have our own filters that define and show our own reality. And that is perfectly fine. That's how it's supposed to be. If we all decide that this podium is sitting here, then it is. But if only I think the podium is there and you all think it's not, who's right? Who's wrong? So
There's gonna be some collisions.
There'll be some collisions, but maybe that helps you a little bit. It's the integration of things in Rumi's field. I felt was a good thing to think about. But you're seeing it all through your own lens. It's all about your views, what you believe, what you've been through, what you're going through now, and you have to work with your filters otherwise. And unless you reach enlightenment eventually.
Even our filters are changed by the moment.
Exactly. That's true. That's true.
I like your filters, but I think
And Greg made a good point. Your filters can change.
they can. And I think part of our trouble is we are raised with people that maybe think a lot like you have a common experience. And what we realize is the world has different common experience, different experiences. And by only thinking through your own point of view and not be willing to say, oh, I bet Marcia feels differently about this. When I hear her talk, she brings something to the conversation I hadn't considered. I'm better off for understanding that that point of view is out there. It's like you look at when they have the Board of Peace or whatever, and not a single person that's impacted by the conflict is at that table, and you think, well, how can you even begin to understand? So I like the oneness. I think the binary part is where we get hung up on, but I do think there's some universal truths. You think about love and you think about helping your fellow man. That's in every religion in the world. So I think we need to look for those sometimes.
Yeah, I'm starting to see it, Rumi's field as like a mathematical fraction. The denominator is like that wholeness, that one. And all of us are the numerators. And so I'm a part of the whole. We're all part of the whole. And I also see that some things are good, some things are bad. Like if I break my leg, you know, that old Zen story about the farmer whose horse, no, his son.
He finds a horse.
He finds a horse. Yes, and his son rides the horse and breaks his leg. And the people in the village say, oh, that's terrible, that's awful. And the farmer says, well, it could be good, it could be bad, right? And then it turns out that there's a war starting, and the son can't go to war. And then, you know, so the farmer, and then everybody's like, oh, that's great, that's good. And he, you know, he still says it could be good, it could be bad. And it's kind of that attitude of, you know, there's many sides to things. And when Jane was talking about humility, it starts with humility because we have to see ourselves in our enemy, because our enemy is us. We are human. Like that common ground is like, we're there. We can do what he's doing, you know. And so if we don't recognize that, then we're not going to be able to have that understanding that there's ways to find that integration and whatever. I don't know. I don't know if I'm making sense, but there's just all these.
So far.
There's a lot of key things because I love that Rumi quote. Like I lived my life this year. That's my favorite quote this year. So, but that oneness and that the humility is to know that I am capable of what Trump is doing. And when I can go to that field and meet Trump there, then I can see my humanity and I can clean up myself first. You know, like go within me and find that part of me that is, you know, still needs to integrate the love and all that. I appreciate that word, humility.
So one more example to Sandy's point is Caleb Carr wrote a book called The Alienist. And he writes, imagine, he said, that you enter a large, somewhat crumbling hall that echoes with the sounds of people mumbling and talking repetitively to themselves. All around you, these people fall into prostrate positions, some of them weeping. Where are you? Sarah's answer was immediate. In an asylum. Perhaps, Chrysler answered, but you could also be in a church. In the one place, the behavior would be considered mad. In the other, not only sane, but as respectable as any human activity can be.
I'm so glad Kim brought up math. My now 11-year-old granddaughter, when she was about 5 or 6, was in the backseat of my car. We were going somewhere, and she said, "Old Daddy," that's what they call me, Old Daddy. She said, "Old Daddy, what is the biggest number you can count to?" And I said, "Well, really, Lily, there is not a biggest number." I said, "In math, there is a symbol for infinity, and it's an 8 lying on its side, and it means that there's always one more number." And she said, "So trillion, trillion, trillion." I said, "Yeah, baby, trillion, trillion, trillion."
Thank you, Teresa. That was beautiful. This fellowship is important to all of us. Contributions allow us to sustain and expand our congregation and to reach out to the community, both nearby and in the larger world. Thus, your giving affirms our commitments to each other and to the community. If viewers at home wish to contribute, you can briefly switch to the main page of our website and just click on the donate button. If you have donated today, we are grateful. May these gifts encourage us to live lives of integrity, compassion, and peace. We are also grateful to all the people who make possible our Sunday services, our various community activities, and our outreach via newsletter and YouTube. And that includes everyone here who cheers us on today. Our announcements, we have our social supper following the service to which everyone, including guests, are invited. Linda, where are we going?
I'm going to Zapatas today. It's a Mexican restaurant near the A Fusion Bowl. Same little in Cornelius.
Okay. And the Tuesday movie at Birkdale
Yeah.
is Project Hail Mary, starting at 1:00, followed by snacks and conversation. Contact Linda or just show up. The Heart of the Carolinas UU Animal Ministry will be taking a few weeks off from building fences for the well-deserving dogs. Best wishes to Alan on his upcoming procedure. Check their webpage at chainfreedogs.org for information. The next Feed and See will be April 9th from 10:30 to 2:30. Contact Jim Arnold. The UU Justice NC community meets every Friday morning at 11 via the Zoom link in each newsletter to recap the past week and take action on issues impacting our state and country. On Friday, we took action on public education and the terrible lack of funding that the state has not given us, and the Iran war. They make it very easy to take action during the hour. So if you're a little hesitant, this is a good way to dip your toes in, and because they tell you exactly what to do and tell you exactly what to say and give you all the information. And now more than ever, it's all hands on deck. And speaking of which, we've already mentioned the No Kings protests. We have quite a few in the area. Huntersville is 10 to 11:30, 9605 Sanford Road near the Target. And Mooresville is 2 to 3:30 on the northwest corner of Brawley and Williamson. It's helpful if you sign up on Mobilize because then we can know how many people are to expect. And you can see Sandy or me for the details from Mooresville. And of course, Doug has already talked about our annual auction. It's very exciting. I'm looking forward to all the fun hippie shenanigans. And now we will have closing words by Reverend Pat.
I'm really having difficulty not thinking about my 47-year-old friend who died last week. She had such a spirit of compassion and joy, and she worked with survivors of abuse. She was a therapist. She was also, very briefly, the chairman of the Democratic Party in Rutherford County. And when she left, I asked her why, and she said, "Too many cooks in the kitchen." I know that's hard to imagine. Our closing words, with all due respect to my beloved Sandy McFeely, come from the unifying last 4 lines of Rumi's poem. When the soul lies down in the grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. Okay.
Our closing song is number 121, We'll Build a Land. We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the royal of gladness is all the morning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Oh, build a land where sisters and brothers, united by God, may then create peace, and justice shall roll down like waters, and peace
and beside the ever-flowing stream. Come, build a land where the mantles of praises resound from spirits once fake and once weak, where the hopes of righteousness enter people. Oh, come, build a land, my people, we sing. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, united by God, may then create peace. Your justice shall roll down like waters, and peace shall ever flowing stream.
We close our services by extinguishing the light in the chalice. Please join me in saying the words in your order of service. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These burn our hearts until we meet again.